that we should mention. I just don't know what they are. Um, I want to wish Goldie Baumgarten, who's back with us this morning, a big mazel tov on her daughter's marriage last Sunday. Everybody should make simchas mit freiliche Herz, gesundheit, freiliche always. We want to wish a refuah shlema to Harav Levi Halevi ben Leah. You should have a refuah shlema ukreva. We're dedicating the class today. Good afternoon. We're dedicating the class today Le'ilui Nishmas Reb Shalom ben Reb Elio Halevi, Fega Rachel's father, fourth yahrzeit, and Miriam, please forgive me, I don't know your last name, but Miriam's husband's father's yahrzeit, David ben Shimon.
Matana.
Okay, Miriam's
Matana.
okay.
And a new baby boy just born, a great grandson.
Wow, Mazel Tov on
Yeah.
this momentous day. Okay, so your father-in-law's neshama should have a yahrzeit, should have an aliyah, and there should only be simchas in the family. And I don't know if Kathy is on this morning, but her partner's granddaughter, Limor Waldman, became a kala. We're doing Sicha Aleph on Parshas Vayera. Now, this is an example of a Sicha that probably most of us would have run away from just a few years ago. The Rebbe is looking at the wording of the Rambam on the halacha concerning Hachnasas Orchim, which is connected to this week's parsha, and the pasuk that the Rambam cites is in this week's parsha, and it has to do with Avram welcoming the Malachim. But if you stick with it, you'll be rewarded with such a beautiful and poignant lesson about Hachnasas Orchim. Aleph. Kasav HaRambam. The Rambam writes, "Ugdoil Hachnasas Orchim mehakbolas pnei Shechina," that Hachnasas Orchim, hospitality to guests, is greater than receiving God's presence. Shen Ne'emar, as it says, Vayar v'hinei shloisha anashim. Okay, and this is from this week's parsha. Avram saw, and behold, there are three people. Of course, this is part of the story of Hashem appearing to Avram to come pay him a visit because Avram was in pain. It was the third day after his circumcision, after his bris milah, and Hashem came to do Bikur Cholim, to visit the sick. And as Hashem is with him, Avram gets distracted by the sight of three people and gets very excited. Hashem had, Rashi explains, made the sun shine very, very strongly. It was very hard for passersby to be out going about their way, and Avram was feeling very sad that he had no guest. And all of a sudden, he sees three men. And the Rambam brings down these four words as proof that welcoming guests is even greater than welcoming the divine presence. The Rebbe says, "Mizeh shehevi Rambam rak arba tevois elu." From the fact that the Rambam brings down only these four words as proof text for this idea that hospitality is greater than welcoming the Shechina, and he doesn't even allude to the fact that we should be paying attention to the words that follow in this verse by putting etc. Mashma, it's understood, shaharayahi mitevos elu levadan. The Rambam is making a statement. He's saying that the proof for how hospitality eclipses even welcoming the divine presence is found in these four words alone. The Rebbe says is not understood. How do these words, and behold, he saw three men, how does this teach us that hospitality is greater than receiving the presence of the Shechina? The Rebbe says the wonder is even greater. The Rambam is quoting a teaching from the Gemara. Visham, and in the Gemara, huva pasuk acher mitoich sipor zeh b'mikra. The Rambam brings down, the Gemara brings down a different pasuk from this story to serve as a proof text that hospitality is greater than Kabbalas Pnei Shechina. Over there, the Gemara says, "Gedoylach Hachnasas Orchim mehakbalas Pnei Shechina." Hachnasas Orchim, welcoming guests, is greater than receiving the Hashem's presence. Dichsiv, as it says, Vayomer Avram said, Adoni imna matzasi chen beinecha al na tavar v'gomer. Avram said, my lords, if I find favor in your eyes, please do not pass by without stopping. Uperish Rashi. And Rashi explains on those words, al na tavar, v'henichoi v'holach l'kabel ha'orchim, that when Avram said, please don't pass over, he left Hashem and he went to receive or to welcome his guests. Okay, now this is a little bit tricky because there's a question about who is he addressing when he says Adonai. Who is he addressing? And Rashi brings down both opinions, and we'll get to that. But first, the Rebbe says, Haresh Rambam Aleph Shina min Arayah Gemara. So the first difficulty is that the Rambam, who presumably is basing his halacha on the Gemara, diverges from the proof text that the Gemara offers and offers a different text. And two, Shavak Raya Pshuta Muva Eres, he passes over or he deletes or he skips a really simple proof text that's very clear. Vehevi pasuk shaharayim imena eina muvenes klal, and instead he brings another pasuk, another verse, and the proof is not at all clear from the words that he brings, which are Vayar v'hinei shloisha anashim, and behold, and he saw there are three men. How does that teach us that welcoming guests is greater than welcoming Hashem's presence? And three, v'nahag lehefech midarka shel Rambam. In doing so, the Rambam digresses from his regular style. Shemishana umevi pasuk shaloi niskar b'gemara klal me'achashu mavor yoser. In that he adopts another text to use as a proof text and does not relate to the pasuk that the Gemara brings down, which is so clear and would have been a perfect proof text. So the Rebbe is saying we need to be alerted by this, that there is something very specific that the Rambam wants to teach us. Because generally speaking, the Rambam would copy and paste the citation from the Gemara. Especially in this case, where that citation seems to be so much more appropriate to bolster the idea that the Rambam is teaching, that the Gemara taught that hospitality is greater even than welcoming the Shechina. Beis. B'negeya le'etzem haraya shegedoylach nasas orchem chulu. Now, regarding the proof text itself, that Chnasas Orchim is greater than receiving the Shechina, min akasu vayarvi ne shloisha anashim. The Rambam is saying that we learn this from the words, and behold, he saw three people. Yesh loimer l'cha'era. We might say that seemingly, shaladas harambam, harayahi me'etzem ri'iyas shloisha anashim. That why is the Rambam bringing down these words? They don't seem to clearly be bolstering his idea, but it would seem that he's trying to bring a proof from the word Vayar, that Avram saw the three people. Because Avram found himself in a situation where Hashem had appeared to him. How is it possible that as God is appearing to him and is talking to him and is visiting with him, he gets distracted and he's looking at something else and he sees those three people approaching? So it seems, it seems that what the Rambam is trying to tell us is that even though Avram was in a dialogue with Hashem, but he was looking and he took note and he paid attention, and this caused him to run towards them. Now, this raises a question. When you're standing before Hashem, it should be completely out of the question to engage in any overture at all. And how much more so to pay attention to some other thing or to some other person. Oh, I'm sorry, Uba Mikolsha came the Kriya Shema. And we can learn this from Kriya Shema, that it says, Shekriyasa tzricha liyos bekavana, that when you say Shema, it has to be with intention, be'emo ubeyira, with reverence and with awe, ubezeya, with trembling. I'm sorry, bereses, with trembling, ubezeya, and with sweating. Why? Because when you say Shema, this is like the king's written communication to his subjects. And every time we say Shema, this has to be like this was just something that was proclaimed by the king. It has to be new. It has to be, we have to be completely enraptured and completely focused. And the same thing is true when you're saying Shemon Esrei. Shema'achar shehamispalel tzorich sheyira atzmai ki'ilu shchina shruya kenegdai. That it says about davening Shemon Esrei in the Shulchan Aruch of the Alter Rebbe that a person has to see themselves as they are literally in front of the Shechina. The Hashem's presence is resting opposite them. Hainu. This means she'olav lahargish us kimi she'omed lefnei melech malchem lach Baruch Hu. You have to feel when you're saying Shemon Esrei that you're standing before the King of all Kings. Hare hadinhu she'asur loy lahafsik l'shum davar. The halacha is that you're not allowed to interrupt for anything at all. V'chayav la'amoid, and you have to stand ka'avda kamei moria. You have to stand like a servant before the master. L'loy shum tnuis, without any movements. Ein lazuz mimkema. You're not supposed to move from your place. Valachas kama v'kama Avram. So how much more so Avram Avinu, shehaya az oimid lifnei Hashem, ba'ofen hachi goli v'ne'ela. And he was literally standing in front of Hashem in the most revealed way. Hainu shebenitin didan. In this particular case, ein medubar lo yaksav v'lo yal keilu. We're not talking about having to, put yourself in the mindset that when you say Shema, it's like you're proclaiming Hashem's proclamation to his subjects, or that's like ki'ilu, like you're standing in front of the King of all Kings. Ella vayar elav havaya mamash. Hashem literally appeared to him. So how could it be that as he's standing before Hashem, Hashem came to visit him, and something else catches his eye, and he sees these three men approaching. So from this itself, there's a proof that welcoming guests is greater than welcoming Hashem's presence. Because Avram knew this, so knowing that this is greater, even though Hashem is with him, he interrupts and he sees the three people. And I believe that this is our segue into doing something we never ever do. Because when we study the Rebbe Sichas, it's mamish like Hakbalas Pnei Hashchina. But the Sikh is going to teach us that there is something that is even more important. So Holly is going to talk to that, and then we will continue in the Sikh.
So I'm happy that I just finished that bite of my breakfast.
I'm sorry. I should have been.
No, it's totally fine, all good. No, I wanted to take a minute to just re-invite. I know this is like the second week in a row, or maybe even the third that we've done this, but I just wanted to like reiterate and re-invite and reinvigorate everybody to really think about coming to the Shabbaton that we are all planning together for January 9th and 10th at the Sleepy Hollow Hotel in Tarrytown, New York. Some of us were just blessed enough to be at the Shabbaton last year. And I just wanted to say a little bit about how I got there. I don't know, like who's on the call, who's on this Zoom before that on a regular basis. And the reason I don't know is because even though I was in the WhatsApp group and I got all the messages, I think in 2 years of being involved, or maybe a year of being involved, I maybe got on one time, maybe two. And but somehow when I saw the message in the WhatsApp to come to a woman's Shabbaton, with everybody and with Rivky, I got very excited and I was really feeling like down in the dumps or low, just like not charged. Like my battery was kind of feeling, my spiritual battery was feeling low. And I just thought, I'm going to do this. It's completely crazy. I literally don't know a single person who is going to this Shabbaton except for Rivky Slonim, who I figured would, be like, hey, it's so good to see you, but very busy. And I signed up anyway, just like on a hope and a prayer that it would give my battery a charge. And subsequently, I found out that two close friends were going. But I just wanted to say that I had like no expectations because I thought this is so ridiculous. I'm going to this Shabbaton for a weekend with a bunch of women that I don't even know. I'm probably going to feel like awkward and like be crying the whole time in which I was at home. But I'm going to do it anyway. Okay, anyway, it was the I would say like it was I could just get teary thinking about it. Like it was a highlight of my life. I have never felt so like just energized by being in the presence of Jewish women that like to this day, I mean, and every day, and I can't wait for the next one, but to this day and every day of my life, I think about it and I draw strength from it. And I don't have like a hard life even. I'm not suffering. It's just this was like such a charge of my soul that I cannot begin to explain it. And I want everyone to have that opportunity. So really it doesn't matter like who comes or who doesn't come. No one is getting anything out of it like from the outside. It's just all about each one of us, but each one of us has the potential to reap so much benefit from this Shabbaton that I really wanted to share that because I think that sometimes people think like, oh my gosh, it's going to be such a schlep. It's going to be so hard. My kids, my this, my that. It's, I'm just here to tell you that it's worth it and it will literally be worth it every single day, even after it's over. You will draw on it. And that's when I also started showing up here, which has been amazing also to actually come and do the learning and be a part of the learning. Even when I'm not here, I generally do watch the Zoom, like the video afterwards. But I just want to kind of implore everybody to say that like we're women, we're busy, we have husbands, we have children, we have jobs, like careers. We're like holding, mountains on our shoulders. And we need sustenance from a place that is not always so easy for us to get. And this is the place to get it. So again, I feel like I'm trying to sell you something. And again, like I'm not trying to sell it to you because I get anything if you come. I'm not getting like a toaster or anything. But I'm just trying to sell you on it because I want you to make the effort to be there because what it's going to be for you. And I have a note that I'm just going to read so I get this part correct, okay? 1 second. There is going to be a bus for 22 people. So you're going to have to sign up for this and you show up and you're the 23rd person. If you're the 23rd person, you're not getting on. So you have to really be on top of this. But there's going to be a bus from the OHEL on Friday midday. And it's going to be a free, like we're going to be able to cover the cost of the bus. Okay. So basically there'll be a bus from Friday midday that will allow people who are maybe coming from the airport or Crown Heights, somewhere for whom it's, for the people for whom it's easier for them to get to the OHEL than to Tarrytown, New York. There's going to be a bus and then that same bus will return you to the OHEL on Sunday afternoon. So you need to register and pay. And you need to let us know, like I guess in the comments, SIPA, would that be where they would say like that they're interested in, that they're signing up for the bus?
If
Does
there's
that,
a comment section, or just reach out to me or to
or
you.
just reach out to SIPA, yeah.
And if we do have like a demand for another 15 people, we're not going to make them walk. We can.
No, we can get another bus.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, the reason I'm saying it the way I'm saying it is because you cannot just show up for the bus. Okay, that's not going to work. Because if people think that, we're going to end up having 30 people for a bus that only has 22 seats, and that's not going to be good. So let us know. But anyway, I want everyone to have, I mean, I don't know if you'll have the exact experience I had. Maybe you'll have a better experience than I had. But I can't wait. And it's just like supercharged for your soul. And it's really for women. It's so special to do something like this just for women. It really matters. So that's it. I wanted everyone to hear me say that. I hope to see like as many of you there as possible.
Thank you so much, Holly. And just to drill down on the pragmatics of this, we need people to register by November 14th. I remember that after we made our first wedding, I said to my husband, we are never going to answer to a wedding or another affair late again, because now we see what it's like. I am sorry to have to confess that I have not been good about that, even after making Baruch Hashem more than one wedding and events and knowing how difficult it is when people are last minute. However, in this particular case, we don't have a choice, because in order to book the block of rooms and to get a space in which we can gather, 2 spaces it'll give us, we actually need to put down the money by November 14th. So we're asking everybody to please, please register. We know it's normal to kind of kick the can down the road, but we just can't do that in this case. Back to the Sikha, back to Kabbalah's Pnei Hashchina from the Hachnasas Orchim. So the Rebbe says, okay, so we understand why the Rambam would be able to use these words as a proof text that Hachnasas Orchim is greater than Kabbalah's Pnei Hashchina. Aval adayin hasha'ela bimkoima. We're in the last paragraph before Seif Gimel. But the original question still remains. Ma'u tamai shel Rambam sheshina min haraya shebigmara. Why would the Rambam change the proof text from the Gemara, Vehevi Raya Cheres, and he brings a different citation, Dipshite Shaharaya Mivayavi Neshlesh Anashim, Ena Mivu Eres Yosem in Haraya Shebegemara, Va'adarabah. And even though the Rebbe explained to us how these words Vayarvi Neshlesh Anashim could serve as a proof text, but it's very clear that the pasuk that the Gemara brings down is clearer. So why would the Rambam swap out the citation? Gimel.
Could you just mention again what was the actual words of the Gemara? What did the Gemara say?
The actual words of the Gemara is when Avram Avinu says, Adoni, Vayomer Adoni imatzasichem beinecha al na ta'avor koiner. My lords, if I find favor in your eyes, please don't pass over me. Now, this is a little complex, and the Rebbe is going to explain, because those words could mean one of 2 things. So we have to wait a few minutes. Gimel. Seemingly, we might be able to reconcile this question and say as follows. Isa b'Gemara b'Meseches Shvuos. The Gemara in Meseches Shvuos says as follows. Shahamaymer gedoy la'achnasas orchim yoser me'akbalas pnei hashchina talui b'machlekes hatanoim. That this aphorism, that this teaching, that hospitality is greater even than receiving the divine presence, is actually dependent on a machlekes, an argument between Tanoim. And it's about this. Im haklal kol shemos ha'amurim b'Torah b'Avram kadosh, kolel games Hashem shebepasuk vayomer Adoni imatzasichem beinecha, oish Hashem zeh cholhu. There's a machlekes in the Gemara between Tanoim. If every time there's a word that seems to indicate that it's about Hashem, it's actually a holy name, it's actually referring to Hashem, or perhaps it's a mundane expression, and it's not referring to Hashem, but rather, in this case, to the angels. Kevon shaloi amru Avram klapei Kadosh Baruch Hu ela lemalachim haya medaber. That this is a machlekes because it seems that that Avram wasn't saying to Hashem Adai. He wasn't calling Hashem by that name. He was talking to the angels. Va'af Rashi b'pirush el Torah hevi shtei adayos. And Rashi brings down both of these deis, both of these opinions. Ulafichach lo hevi Rambam es pasuk vayomer gomer al na ta'avor. So the Rebbe says, l'chayra, seemingly, we could say this is the reason why the Rambam doesn't bring down the pasuk that the Gemara cited, because not according to all opinions could you use these words as a proof that receiving guests is greater than receiving the Pnei Hashchina. Ubefrat l'shitase b'mar nevuchim she'Avram amar zois lamalach. And especially according to how the Rambam opines in his book Mar Nevuchim, a guide for the perplexed, that Avram is saying this not to Hashem, but to the oldest of the angels. Aval be'emes ein l'taretz came. So after the Rebbe says that l'chayr, you could use this way of understanding why the Rambam does not embrace the citation, then he says, but in truth, no cigar. You can't use this. Ki b'sefer hayat shalai, because in the Mishnah Torah, in the Rambam's magnus opus in his Yad, Pasuk Rambam beferish, the Rambam clearly adjudicates Kol Hashemais Hamurim Bavram Kadesh Avzeh Shenemar Hashem Imna Matzasichen Harehu Kadesh. The Rambam comes down on the side of saying that all of the references to Hashem are all holy, meaning that they're all referring to God. Even this name, which according to opinions is referring to the angels, and it means my lords rather than Hashem. So basically, we're still left with our original question. Why does the Rambam mess with a citation? He doesn't usually do that. He usually imports it directly from the Gemara. And here he digresses from his normal style. He brings us a different citation, and the Rebbe has a third part of this question, which is, it's not even clearer than the original citation. It's more ambiguous. Why would he choose these words? Before the Rebbe gives us the answer, he's going to take us a little bit further in the meandering of the intellectual inquiry surrounding this. Dalet. V'hinei, b'mar nevuchim bir Rambam, shere'iyah shloisha anashim b'hemshech shel achrei zeh, hayurak b'mara hanevuah. In his Sefer Mar Nevuchim, the Rambam explains that this whole story of Avram seeing the angels actually was all a vision. It was all a prophetic vision. V'hakol hu hemshech tir hamara shel Vayera lav Hashem. And all the details of the story are a description of the vision that begins with the words, Hashem appeared to him. Okay, so rather than understanding the words, and Hashem appeared to Avram as Hashem actually coming to Avram, and then all the details of the story that ensued, rather, Vayar Elav Hashem means Hashem gave Avram a prophetic vision, and everything that follows are details of this vision. So if we go according to this opinion that this is all a vision, maybe we would be able to say, L'chayra, Shaladas Harambam, Ein Kol Raya Min Pasuk Vayomer, Adoni Al Natavor. Now we'll understand why the Rambam kind of pushes this citation to the side. Kevan Shetaychen HaKasav Kan, Einai Sipor Mu'ura, Shehitrachesh B'Pearl Mamash. Because this pasuk doesn't speak to a story that actually occurred. The Gam HaMira Adonai Goimer Al Natavar Hi Chelik Mimara Hanevuah Shara Avram. It's rather part of the vision that Avram saw. Aval Ein Levaya Kain. But the Rebbe says, nope, that's not going to work to explain why the Rambam kind of pushed aside the citation. Ki pasuk Vayarvi Nishlisha Nashim Shehevi Rambam L'Raya Af Hu Haya Lefi Perush Mar Nevuchim B'Mar Nevuah V'Loi Adif HaMeha. But if you're going to say that the Rambam rejects a certain pasuk because it didn't really happen, it's all part of a vision, well, guess what? The pasuk that he gives us is also part of the vision. So how is that better, this one better than that one? And on the other hand, and if you're going to say that you can bring a proof for this idea that hospitality is even greater than accepting Pnei Hashchina, if you're going to say that you could bring it from a vision, if you're going to say that this whole vision is about, or at least in part, about Avram teaching this, Hashem teaching this lesson to Avram, Hari Adraba. Then on the contrary, Lefizeh mistaber lahavi raya dafka min pasuk vayomer adoni gomer al natavor. Then we're back to square one. If you're going to take a proof from a vision rather than a story that actually happened, again, it would seem that the words that the Gemara brought down would be more efficacious. And the Rambam should have also embraced that. Now, the Rebbe says, B'mar Nevuchim Sham, over there, where the Rambam treats this subject in his Guide for the Perplexed, Sham Bir HaRambam, there, the Rambam explains, Shahapasuk Vayar Elav Hashem, that the verse that says, and Hashem appeared to him, Hu Haklal, that introduces the general narrative, and from the verse, and behold, he saw 3 men standing, the Elach, and going forth, Matchil Pirut Hanavua. That's where the details of the prophecy are given. Shebechlal Vayare Lav Hashem, that with the kind of overarching words, and Hashem appeared to him, Hitchil Levar Ech Haisatzuras Ha-ha-ra'is hahu. That's where the psukim of the Torah begin to explain what this vision was, how that vision unfurled. Va'amar shetchila ra shloisha nashim. And the pasuk tells us at the beginning he saw 3 people. Ulefizeh. So based on this way of understanding it, that this is all a vision, it starts with Vayare Lav Hashem, Hashem appeared to him. That introduces the vision. Then we have the details, and the details begin to tell us what it is that Avram saw. So based on this, so when it says that Avram saw 3 people, he saw this in the prophetic vision. Shuv ein mikan shum mashmos lahadafas achnasas archim al pnei akbalos pnei hashchina. Shari re'iyah shloisha nashim lo yifsikas akbalos pnei hashchina. So Rebbe says, if you're going to go according to what the Rambam teaches in Moreh Nevuchim, that this is all a prophetic vision. So even when Avram sees 3 men, it's all in the vision. So he's not leaving God.
Can I interrupt with this? There's a big question here that's maybe not obvious.
Absolutely, but could I just finish the paragraph, just to finish the thought? Yeah. Ella vayar v'hinei gomer gufa hu hanavua. But rather, in other words, how do we learn the lesson that you leave the Pnei Hashchina in order to welcome your guests when this is all in a prophetic vision, and Avram doesn't leave God? This is all unfurling in the Nevuah, which is all Hakpolas Pnei Hashchina. It's all about welcoming God's presence. I'm sorry, Elisheva, one more paragraph just to finish. Masha Enkein, in contradistinction, bepasuk vayomer Adoni al notavor. But when you talk about the original proof text that was offered by the Gemara, in that pasuk, Hari Masha Ehu Hakadosh Baruch Hu Kan b'Mara Hanavua Shara Atzmai Omer Lashem al Natavor. So through the fact that Avram sees in this prophetic vision, Hashem is showing him that he sees himself saying to Hashem, wait a minute, don't leave me, al natavor, don't leave. This comes to teach us, even though it's not happening in real time, but Hashem is showing him a movie, as it were. And in the movie, he's telling Hashem, wait a second, I see 3 guests, I'm just going to run and welcome them, I'll be right back with you. So again, we're back to square one. It would seem that this would be the preferred pasuk to use. Whether you believe that the story happened in real time or whether this is a prophetic vision, either way, the pasuk that the Gemara offered would seem to be a better proof text than what the Rambam offers. Why does he do this? Elisheva, over to you.
Thank you, and I'm sorry for interrupting. I think the big question is, Vayar Lav Hashem, Hashem showed himself. If Hashem has no body, the question is, what exactly did Hashem show him? And so that might be answered by that it's a vision, because I didn't hear that being asked. Like, Hashem has no body. What does that mean? That Vayar? What does he see exactly?
Right. I think generally speaking, we think of that as a vision, that Hashem appears. It's not the only time that Hashem appears to to people in the Torah. But you're right, that gives rise to saying it's all a prophetic vision. The nice of Al so thank you for that, Elisheva. So in addition to all of what the Rebbe has explained, Bechlal, generally speaking, Doiche Godol Lefarish Levar Besefer Hayad Al Pi Perusha Shel Rambam Lepsukim Shebesefer Mer Nevuchim. The Rebbe says, this is not our first rodeo. We know that the Rambam says divergent things in the Mer Nevuchim from his other Sfarim, and specifically the Yad HaChazaka, the Mishnah Torah. Keep a Sefer Hayad, lo yiskir inyan hanal. In the Sefer Hayad, the Rambam does not say it was a vision. Shaloi hayakan dibor ma'aseh b'poel v'chol apar shaloi hesa ela b'mar hanevua. He doesn't take this approach at all, that it wasn't a story that actually happened, it all happened in prophetic vision. Va'id v'ikar, b'divrei harambam didan hamuvoim lekaman kimat mifurish hadvarim oru b'poel. In the words that we began with, in the Rambam's halachas about hospitality, it seems clear that he is relating to this as an actual story that occurred. So it's really hard for us to answer a question we have on the Rambam's wording in his halachas with citing something from Mer Nevuchim. Hey,
excuse me 1 second. It really doesn't matter in a sense, because the only way Hashem ever appears is through a vision, through a nevuah. He doesn't physically appear. So what's the difference between the two? Whether Hashem actually appeared or he appeared in a vision. Either way, it would be a nevuah.
Okay, thank you so much for bringing that up, because the difference is critical. If the word Vayar Elav Hashem means that Hashem came to visit him, yeah, of course it's a nevuah. It's like it's a vision. Yeah, he came to visit him, and then Avram interrupted because he saw people. Or if this whole narrative about Avram seeing guests and Avram, giving them this warm hospitality actually happened in real time. And so the Rebbe entertains that at first. And he says, maybe if we see it, if we understand it all as having actually just been a vision and not having happened in real time, then we'll be able to understand things differently. But the Rebbe says, but that doesn't even help us. Because even if it's all a vision, the pasuk that the Gemara brought down, rather than the pasuk that the Rambam brings down, is still a more clear text to bolster the idea that Hachnosas Orchim is greater than Hakbalas Pnei Hashchina. So no matter how we understand it, we're back to square one. And now the Rebbe is ready to unbox.
Sorry. Can I feel like it's such a dumb question, but are we saying that Avram didn't understand it was a vision, or he knew it was? I feel very lost. What's going on over here?
Okay, so I'm sorry, then I apologize for that. The Rebbe is saying that there are two opinions regarding this entire story, okay? One is an opinion that the Rambam brings down in Mer Nevuchim, that this entire story, this narrative with the angels coming and his running to slaughter 3 calves and give them each a tongue, and he tells Sarah to hurry up and make bread, all of this is part of a vision that Hashem showed him, and this vision is introduced with the words, Vayar Elav Hashem.
Meaning it didn't happen,
Correct.
But Hashem showed him the vision as if it happened.
He showed him a movie of this whole story.
But he wasn't actually actively involved in any of this.
Exactly. And then there is the conventional way that we learn this, that the Rambam refers to the story in his Yad HaChazaka, which is, no, that the story happened. And Vayare Love Hashem means that Hashem came to visit him. And while Hashem was there, Avram saw from the corner of his eye 3 men, and he said to Hashem, please, wait here. Al no ta'avor. Okay, so when he says that word, which could mean my lords, which could be understood as him speaking to the 3 angels saying, don't leave me, I really want to host you. But it could also be understood as meaning he's speaking to Hashem and he's saying, please. Hold on a second. Don't leave me. I need to take care of this. I'll be right back with you.
So in the vision version, we're saying that he's still in the vision. He said to Hashem, "Wait," or
Yes.
that piece fell out.
Yes. Yeah. No, that doesn't fall out. Yes. And that's what
So
the Rebbe
in the
says.
vision, he asked Hashem to wait, and he served the guests.
Right. And that's what the Rebbe is saying, that even if you want to say the whole thing is a vision, you still want to use those words as a better proof text than the words that the Rambam brings down in a Sefer Halacha.
Thank you.
Okay.
Wait. So
because I think
Rambam has two different opinions himself.
it's not the only instance where the Rambam says things that are actually antithetical in the Yad and in the Moreh Nevuchim. It's different. He's speaking to different audiences. That's the Rebbe has a sikh about that. Explains that. But for now, we're going to look at Seif Hey, where the Rebbe now is going to explain why did the Rambam use or choose these words by Yarvi Shleisha Anashim. Those 4 words. What does he want to teach us?
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
If this was
unless people, sometimes people are.
or should we leave it for the end? I could leave it for the end.
Okay. If it's not actually going to bother you, and you'll be able to pay attention, then let's leave it for the end.
No, it's fine. It'll go to the end.
Okay. I'm so sorry. Hey, v'yuvan behektim bir divrei Rambam sham lachais elu. So we're going to understand why the Rambam uses these words as a proof text by prefacing with an explanation of the halachas. Because remember, the whole sikha started with looking at words that the Rambam says in a Sefer Halacha. So over there, Bahalacha Aleph, this Vizel L'Shaineh, the Rebbe says this is the Rambam's terminology in the first halacha about the subject. Mitzvah Aseh Shel Divreihem, there's a mitzvah Aseh of the Chachamim, and then he lists what are these mitzvahs, levaker cholim, to go visit the sick, and other things, and then the Rambam says ulalavois ha'archim, and to accompany guests when they're leaving, ulis asek chulei, and to engage with the details of burial of a Jew. That's halacha aleph. Ubalacha beis kasaf, and then in the next halacha the Rambam writes, schar halavia meruba min hakol. The reward for accompanying your guests when they leave is greater than all the other things. And then the Rambam continues, Avram Avinu. This is a statute that Avram Avinu established, the derech hachesed shenohag ba, and this is the path of kindness with which he comported himself. Ma'achil oivrei derachim, he would give food to the passersby. Umashke oisan, and he would similarly give them drinks. Umelave oisan, and he would accompany them when they were leaving. And hospitality is greater even than welcoming the Hashem's presence. Shenemar, as it says, by Yarvi Shleisha Anashim. Behold, and he saw there were 3 men. Ulivayam Yoser Machnasasan. Accompany them is greater even than the hospitality that you show them. Amru Chachamim. The Rambam finishes off by saying, our sages taught, Kol she'ena melava kilu shefech damim. Anybody who doesn't accompany their guests out, it's as if he spilled blood. V'tzarich lahavin, and we have to understand, lama kasav harambam, b'halacha aleph, b'bir hamitzvah seishel divreim, u'lalavai sa'orchim, v'loi b'loshen ha'koil al-hakol ha'chnasas orchim. Why in the halacha aleph, where the Rambam seems to be listing a whole bunch of mitzvahs of the Rabbanan, why does he use the term u'lalavai sa'orchim to accompany the guests? Why doesn't he use something more overarching and encompassing, which is hachnasas orchim? After all, there are other things you do with guests besides accompanying them when they're about to leave. Elisheva, is it something that is absolutely pivotal to what we're doing now, or could it wait? Okay, maybe the hand was from before. V'tzarech lahavit. I'm sorry. So Bepashtus Yeshafarish, the Rebbe says, simply we might explain, Shabalachazu, Isik Rambam mitzvah say shel divrahim, Hakshur legemilas chasadim shebigufay. One way of addressing the question that the Rebbe raises, which is why is the Rambam fixated on this aspect of hospitality, of accompanying your guests when they leave your house, maybe we could explain that it's because here the Rambam is focusing on aspects of kindness, of Gemilas Chesed, shebigufoy, that you do with your person, meaning levaker cholim, to visit people that are sick, lenachem avelim, and to go pay a shiva call, and so on and so forth, to comfort the bereaved. And as he writes in the continuation of Halacha Aleph, the Rambam does use this terminology, that these are things that you do with your body, and there's no shear, there's no metric, there's no measure. The more you do, the better. Masha Ein Kain, this is in contradistinction to other parts of hospitality. Chelek ha'oichel v'hamashke shebachnasas orchim, hu bi'ikari inishal gemilas chasadim b'memaynai. The other parts of hospitality, giving people food, giving people drink, this is in the main an expenditure of your assets. Okay, it's a money expenditure, but it's not something, the effort that you're making with your person. And the Rambam elsewhere in his Perish Mishnayos says that when it comes to how much food or how much drink you're going to, allot, you're going to budget, there's a shear to that. There's a metric, there's an amount. You're not obligated to empty your bank account to feed every single guest that needs food and drink. But when it comes to kind of the vibe and your accompaniment of them, ein lashir, there's no amount. In other words, there's nothing that's too much. Aval ein ze bir maspik. But the Rebbe says, but this too is not enough of an explanation to the question as to why the Rambam seems fixated on this particular aspect. Balacha beis kasav Rambam she'achayk shechalkahu Avram Avinu koilel gam liyos machil ovrei drachim amashka isan. When he kind of unpacks this, the Rambam writes that Avram Avinu kind of created this statute for us to follow, and there he includes giving passersby food and drink and so on. And it's in that halacha that he brings this big lesson that hospitality even eclipses welcoming Hashem's presence. So if we're going to adopt the thesis that the Rambam is kind of focusing not on the money that you spend on guests, but in how you treat them, then why in Halacha Beis does he talk about the food you give and the drink that you give? If the only thing the Rambam wanted to underscore was the importance of accompanying your guests to their car, etc., etc., he should have said, this is the rule, this is the axiom, this is the corollary, this is what Avram Avinu taught us, that when you host people, you should accompany them when they're about to leave in style. He wouldn't have talked. He would have written it a different way, seemingly, to underscore this important aspect. But from the way the Rambam writes Halacha Beis, we learn that all of the details are important. Including giving them food and drinks. Hevi kan es pote adorim legabe achnosas orchim rak kehakdama ukadei lahadish yoses mala halafia. So the Rebbe says, I know what you're thinking. Maybe you're going to say that the Rambam brings down that you have to feed your guests and you have to give them drinks only as a preface to telling you that the most important thing is how you accompany them. That how you accompany them is even greater than how you host them. And especially because at the end of the halacha, this is a real zinger, very subtle. The Rambam says, and if you don't accompany your guests, it's as if you spilled blood. Ouch. Madgish kvar ba'ofen hamuvach b'yoseh says nechitzos v'gaydel in halvia. So it seems like the Rambam is really underscoring that. So we have a question. And we have another question in Vav. Gam darush bir. The Rebbe says, and we also have to understand. Harambam pasach b'lashon schar halavia meruba min hakol. The Rambam in his halacha says that the reward that you get for accompanying your guest is greater than everything. V'siyim, and then he concludes that halacha by saying, Amru chachamim kol she'ena malava ki ilu shofech damim. Our sages taught that anybody who doesn't accompany their guests is as if they spilled blood. And in like fashion, the Rambam also mentions this idea of accompaniment in his next halacha regarding the Beis Din, regarding the Jewish court, where he says, "Who Beis Din hayom mitaknin shluchin lelavos adam ha'over mimokim lemokim." That one of the things the Beis Din did was set up a system where there was accompaniment for people who, let's say, had to come to the Beis Din, they had to ask a question, then they had to travel back. The Beis Din was responsible to give them accompaniment. And if they were lazy in this respect, if they didn't do this, it's as if they spilled blood. And this is connected to the idea of the Egla Arufa, that whole mysterious mitzvah in the Torah about what happens if a person dies and they die outside of the city and who is responsible, and so on and so forth. So simply we might say that the reason for this is shebeheder halavia, that if you don't have accompaniment, ki'ilu shefech damim, it's like you're spilling blood. Humishum shehalavaya magne ala oireach shelo yahagu b'derech. Because accompanying them literally shields them and protects them from being killed on the road. Like the Gemara speaks in Masechah Sotah and gives a proof for this. It's not understood. Once the Rambam tells us how great accompanying guests is, that if you don't do it, it's like you murdered. It's like you spilled blood. So why does he say that the reward for accompanying your guest is greater than everything? The Rebbe says, he davar tafel, it's like, duh. Like, why do you even have to tell us this? When somebody says they have $200, they don't say, oh, I have $100. If they have $200, then the $100 is part of the $200 that they have. In other words, the Rambam is concluding and saying, if you don't accompany your guests, it's like you're shedding blood. Why does he have to say the reward for this is greater than anything? We got it. we got the subtlety in your message there. It would seem to be included that this is a great thing and a great schar. And here the Rebbe is going to tie it all up for us, and in this way answer the original question of why the Rambam digressed from his normal style and didn't just copy and paste from the Gemara, rebuffed the original citation, chooses another one that seems to be less clear. But now the Rebbe says, if you really understand what the Rambam is doing in the context, then you'll understand why he chooses the citation that he did. V'yesh loymar, nikudas habir bazeh. We might say that the point of the explanation is as follows. Be'inin gemilas chasadim yesh bechlalo shnei pratim. Generally speaking, when you talk about kindness, there are two facets, there are two dimensions. Aleph, the first is hanifal shebemitzvah. First, there's the way in which another person is going to be affected by the gemilas chasadim that you do. You're either filling in for some deficit that they have, or you are bringing them some type of benefit. That's the first dimension of gemilas chasadim. And then beis ha'pa'ula mitzad gavra. Then there's the way in which this action affects the person who's doing the action. Midas chazdoi shel goimel chesed. The way in which doing gemilas chesed makes the person different. It highlights, it strengthens their muscle called kindness. And in the same way that there are globally or generally two facets to gemilas chasadim, in the same way, yeshnei pratim b'achnasas orchem. There are two facets when it comes to hospitality. Aleph, ha'anyanim shemekabel ha'ireyach, ha'meichel, v'ha'mashke v'chulei al yidei ha'pu'ulas ha'pratiyos. There's what the guest is receiving, the food, the drink, the comfortable bed, through the different actions that the host engages in. And then there's beis, there's midas ha'chesed shel bal habayis ha'ma'areach. And then there's the kindness of the host. Ha'his aniyus v'simas halev shemare klapi ha'areach. The interest and the attention that the host shows the guest. Okay, so you could say there's the tangible and then there's the intangible. There's what you're giving them, and there's the vibe that you're projecting towards them. V'hine b'chlal, generally the Rebbe says, b'nyane gemilas chasadim or b'mitzvah shebin adam l'chaver b'chlal, ma shenegea be'ikar hu hanifal. The Rebbe says, generally speaking, when it comes to gemilas chesed, when it comes to the mitzvahs between one person and another, generally speaking, the most important thing is what has happened practically. Hatoiva v'hatoyeles haba l'chaver b'poel. We want to understand, practically speaking, how is this good and how is this of benefit to the person who you helped. Ve'ilu midas hachesed shel adam goyim el hachesed einin negas kol kach la'adam mekabel hachesed. And what the person who's doing the kindness is like, how evolved, how developed their midas hachesed is not that important. Because what we're focusing on is what did the person come away with in terms of your kindness. And the main thing is we're looking at the person who's getting the chesed. What did they get? So much so that we find regarding tzedakah that we're told that shemi shema'abeit sela mitoich yodai, person loses a coin from their hand, umatza ani, and then a poor person finds this coin, v'halach v'nisparseim ba, and this person is sustained through this money, kiye mitzvah tzedakah. This is considered that the person fulfilled the mitzvah of tzedakah, and there are other sichos with the Rebbe cites, and he brings down that even if the person is ruining the fact that they lost the money, they're upset, it doesn't detract from the fact that it's considered a mitzvah of tzedakah because the poor person found the coin and they are able to benefit. But the Rebbe says, but there's a difference between this, a very important difference in achnasas archim. Olam b'achnasas archim noisaf chidush miyuchad. But when it comes to achnasas archim, there's a novelty. Shemidas hachesed, hergesh hachesed shel habayis ha'ma'areach, noigas lenifal lepu'ulos hanasos avor ha'areach. When it comes to achnasas archim, what the host is feeling, their kindness that's in their heart, that impacts all the details of their hosting. It's not gravy. It's not extra. It's actually the heart and soul of hospitality. Achnasas ha'areach tzricha le'asos ba'ofen she'areach yargish shekol pu'ulos ha'ma'areach b'shviloi ba'os mitzad his ani nusoi mitad hergesh shaloi. The person who's being hosted has to feel that everything that the host is doing is coming from a place of deep interest. It's really coming from a deep feeling of Avas Yisrael, of love. Kimerumas, b'divrei harambam, shekol mitzvahs elu harei hein bechlal v'ahavta l'reach kamecha. And this is alluded to at the end of Halacha Aleph. This is the first time that the Rebbe is telling us that this is also in Halacha Aleph, that the Rambam says there that all of these mitzvahs that I'm listing are all part of the great rule, v'ahavta l'reach kamecha. V'nekuda zu ba l'idei bitui b'chiyuv l'lavoi sa'orchem. And this most important point about Achnasas Orchim comes to full expression in this aspect of accompanying your guests when they're leaving. Shechein, levia initial milut tzrachav, because accompanying them to their car or their bus or whatever, to the train station, that's not part of filling their needs of the guest, but it's not part of milut tzrachav shel ereach ba'odei ereach. It's not like giving them, fulfilling their needs for nutrition and hydration, giving them food and drink. But rather, this comes from kindness. This is like above and beyond. But on the one hand, you could argue it's not necessary. And on the other hand, it's actually the most important part, and it remains part of your obligation, even when it seems like you parted ways. The person left you already. They're gone. They went to the airport. But why is it so important? Al yada, because through this overture, margish ha'ereach shekol ma shenase b'shviloi ba mitzad hergesh halev shel balabayis hamareach shemisani by v'tuvasoi nagasloi, because it's only retroactively when the guest sees with how much love the host accompanies them out that they become convinced that everything that this host did for them earlier actually came from a place of love and kindness and graciousness. Ches. And now we can understand the trajectory of what the Rambam says here. Schar halavia meruba min hakol. The reward for accompanying a guest is greater than everything. This is a statute that Avraham Avinu established. It's his way of kindness that he comported himself in this way. He would feed passersby, he would give them beverages, and he would accompany them. You remember the Rebbe asked, if the Rambam wants to focus just on this thing, why does he bring down in Halacha Beis that Avraham Avinu would also give people food and drink? But what the Rebbe is being mechadesh here is that every aspect of Achnasas Orchim is informed by this last, seemingly extraneous aspect of Achnasas Orchim. You might think, I've been such a great host, so patient. I've gone above and beyond. I made them so many good things to eat. That took more time. And I bought extra kinds of drinks that I don't usually have in stock in my refrigerator. Okay, I said goodbye. I kissed them on both cheeks, maybe 3 times even, and I'm done. But the Rebbe says, but why does the Rambam bring down that Avraham Avinu used to give food and he used to give drink and he was malava his guests? Because the truth of the matter is that it's only through that last aspect that it becomes clear that the other aspects that seemingly are the more basic ones or the more important ones, that those were actually done with love and graciousness, and you actually want to do it. And that's why you're accompanying the guests, because it's really hard for you to part from them. You want to linger with them another few minutes. Jackie Mason had this whole thing he used to do about how, Jews say goodbye, but they never leave. But there's something to that. We see that it's very well sourced. So that's why this statute that Avram Avinu established is not just on the detail of the accompaniment, but it speaks to the whole rubric of hosting. Avram Avinu yasad as mitzvah achnasas orchim ba'ifin kazeh. Avram Avinu established, let's just say, like a bar. He set the bar very high for what hospitality is. That it should include not just the ways in which you seemingly impact the guest, what the guest needs, so the Rebbe is saying that in hosting, you can't divide the two facets of Gemilas Chasadim. You can't say there's the way in which it impacts the person, the subject that's receiving the kindness, and the way in which it impacts the giver, the one who is offering the kindness. Rebbe says in hosting, it's one and the same. V'zuhi derech hachesed shenahag ba, shebiyachad im yoyse machil over drachim amashkaisen tavoy gam levias ha'archem. Just as he gave them food and he gave them drink, he gave them this accompaniment. He gave them this expression of love and care and interest. Al pizeh yesh levar gam ketzat siyum divrei Rambam amru chachamim kol she'enim lava keilu shevach damim oile bekana echad imalas halavia schar halavi merubal min hakol shebetchila halacha. Now we're in a better position to answer another question that the Rebbe asked when he was parsing the text of the Rambam's halachas, which is, it seems that once the Rambam tells us, oh so subtly, that if you don't accompany your guest when they're leaving, it's like you're spilling their blood. So we asked the question earlier, so why does he have to say that there's a great reward for this? I mean, duh. Seemingly, this is really important. We understand there's going to be a great reward. The Rebbe says, but now we understand. Kavanas harambam kan ein rak shadavar olo ligrem l'shvichas demei ha'irech b'alichasei b'derech. Because what the Rambam wants to impress upon the person who's learning his halacha is not just that if you don't accompany them, you are going to embarrass them. It's going to be like shedding blood. Elagam shenigram mikach hergesh v'chazdamim etel ha'reach. I'm sorry, I said this wrong. It's not just that you have to accompany them for pragmatic reasons because maybe they could get hurt, like the Beis Din would have to provide, I guess, chaperones for people that came to make sure they get home safely. But what the Rambam wants to say is that if you don't accompany them, you might cause them to feel like their blood is being shed. When the host doesn't accompany the guest, the guest is able to discern the guest is able to feel the lack of attention and the lack of devotion. They're able to feel the lack of midas hachesed shebo pu'ula. They're able to feel the lack of the warmth and the chesed. And then the guest leaves feeling not comfortable with how they were hosted. And like the Gemara says, azil sumka va'asi chevra, that the blush, the redness goes away and they become pale. That this shvichas damim in the emotional sense, hu margish bizoyon bedavar, he feels ashamed, and this is shvichas damim. Val derech masha matzinu, and it's like what we find bitzad bitzdaka, like what we find with tzedakah. It says that you have to give, right? The guest might feel that the host is so happy that they're going already. And it's like the Rebbe brings down what it says about tzedakah, that you have to give tzedakah with a pleasant face and with joy. The giver of the tzedakah has to commiserate with the person that they need to have tzedakah, that they need to ask for tzedakah. And in contradistinction, when a person gives to a poor person, but they do it reluctantly and they do it in a nasty way, ufanav kfushes bekarka chule, and like they're looking down at the ground, meaning that like they don't do this with interest, with sensitivity, with love. Avad schusay vehefseda. You lose the schus of giving the tzedakah. You gave the money, but you made the ani feel horrible. Val pizem muvon gamatam shetzion arambam ki inyan b'fnei atzmai mitach prate mitzvah nasas archim rak es inyan l'lavois ha'archim. And now we understand why in Halacha Aleph, the Rambam only singles out this aspect of hospitality, that you should accompany the guest. Because it's specifically in this aspect of hospitality that is expressed the main thing about the mitzvah, which is simas halev la'ereach, to pay attention to the guest. Yesera mizu, and even more. Kasher chesera halavia, when you're lacking this aspect of accompaniment, yesh chisaron gam b'mitzvah nachnasas ha'archim shebachila v'ashtiya shenitnu l'reach kanal. The Rebbe says, as I've explained above, that if you don't show your guests that you actually like them, that you're happy that they're in your home, that you care about them, then retroactively, everything you gave them to eat and drink is like, it's almost like it's null and void. But definitely there's a deficit in that test. Now, based on everything we've done, we might say that this is the reason why the Rambam brought a citation to bolster the teaching that hospitality is greater even than receiving Hashem's presence. Min pasuk, what did he choose to use as a proof text? Vayar v'nei shleisha anashim, and he saw, and there were 3 men. V'shina mehamivor b'gemara, and in doing so, he digresses from what the Gemara did. Shadavar nilmad min pasuk vayemer adoni gomer al notavar. The Gemara brings down a different pasuk. Why does he do it? Hadavar ba behemshach l'teichen halacha. Because now that we know a little bit about the context of the halacha, we understand that the Rambam brings down this pasuk as part of the larger context. The Rambam is focusing on the way in which Avraham Avinu set up a statute about hachnosas orchim and the kindness with which he did this mitzvah. Shedavar ikri b'achnosas orchim hu midas hachesed shebazeh. With this, the Rambam wants to broadcast very, very clearly that the main thing in hachnasas orchim is the kindness that propels this mitzvah. Hahis aninus v'simas halev lo ireach, the interest and the attention shown. Lo irach, to the guest. V'hadgashazu ein rak b'shas kiyam ma'aseh hachnasas orchim, and this is being underscored not just when you're actually hosting, kasher ha'me'areach machil ovei drachim, when the host is giving food to the passerbys, or after, elagam lefnei, but this also applies before it. Tekif b'shah shehu roya es ha'archim u'mekabel es pneim noiga simas halev his aninus ba'archim. Okay, look what the Rebbe did here. He brought our attention to the fact that the Rambam says that the proof for this idea of how you treat guests properly is from the words Vayar v'nei shleisha anashim. It's not just what you do when you're feeding them and when you're drinking, when you're giving them beverages. And it's not just that you're accompanying them, but Vayar. As soon as Avram saw, his attention was fixated on the guests. In other words, the love, the attention, the interest, the sensitivity, the consideration, whatever we want to say you have to show towards guests, has to begin even before they come to your house. And this is expressed in the words, and he saw, and there were 3 men. Avram sam libay l'shleishes hanashim toich kedek pos pnei hashchina. Even though Avram is hosting Hashem, he's entertaining Hashem. Hashem came to be Mevakar Cholam him. But Vayar. But as soon as these 3 people are on his radar, he sees them. Wow, it's so progressive. Everybody wants to be seen today. He sees them. Vayar Avram. He saw them. Yud. Al pikola now, efshel liyashiv she'ela nesefes belimud zeh me'avram shegdolach nasas orchem ma'akapolos pnei shchina. Based on everything we've said above, now we could reconcile another question about this whole subject of Hachnasas Orchim is greater than hosting or receiving Pnei Shechina. So the Rebbe says something so interesting. He says, B'Sefer Shel Davar, his barer shebahachalas v'hashkas shloishes anashim lo kiyem Avram mitzvahs Hachnasas Orchim. At the end of the day, it becomes clear that Avram Avinu actually didn't host these people in conventional sense. He didn't give them food. He didn't give them drink. Because in truth, these were not people. They did not need nutrition. They did not need hydration. They don't have metabolic needs. And especially according to the opinions that they never ate anything. It just appeared as if they were eating. And even according to the opinion that they actually ate and drank, it wasn't because they needed it. They did it out of respect for Avram. They did it to honor him, Bovad. They did it only for that reason. Or because there's a rule, Azlas Lakarta halach b'ni Musa. When you come to a city, you should follow its customs. When in Rome, do as the Romans do. So it comes out that once you understand what's happening here, that they're malachim, they don't need his food, they don't need his drink. So it's a shaila on the whole story. This is Hachnasas Orchim. People who are just kind of pretending to eat to honor you. So based on this, we have a wonder. Aleph, Lafia, Amor Shela Amita Shel Davar Lehayakan Kiyom Mitzvah Hachnasas Orchim. Based on what we just said, kind of like this plot twister, that, hey, wait a minute, they weren't actually even guests. They didn't need the food, they didn't need the drink. So based on this, it's not even a mitzvah Hachnasas Orchim. Asur haya lahafzik l'shem kach ma'akapolos pnei shechina. So if it's not real guests that need your food and drink, then you're prohibited from interrupting when you're hosting Hashem. You're hosting the Shechina. How is it possible for us to say that Avram Avinu stumbled so badly and he left Hashem rudely to welcome guests that are not even guests and don't even need him? Beis. Kasha loimer shelemedim din emes gedolach nasarchem v'chulei mipuula shebeemes lo yisach nasarchem. And it's really hard to conjure that we learn this axiom that receiving guests is greater than receiving the Pnei Shechina from a story where it wasn't Hachnasas Orchim b'chlal beemes. It was like a mirage. It appeared to be Hachnasas Orchim, but it wasn't really. So the Rebbe says you're forced to conclude even though the guests of Avram just appeared to be people, they weren't actual people. But there was no deficit in the Hachnasas Orchim that Avram Avinu did. Why? And it wasn't just that it appeared like he was doing Hachnasas Orchim, and that made him happy, but he actually did it. Why? And the explanation the Rebbe says is what I taught you. Ikar inyan Hachnasas Orchim mudgash lo kol kach bepu'ulas hachefsa da'achilo shtiya shemekabel hareach ela b'midas hachesed derech hachesed sheba. Because the Rebbe just taught us the main thing about Hachnasas Orchim is not the food, and it's not the drink, and it's not even the bed and the extra pillow and the Shabbos lamp. It's the kindness. It's the attitude. It's the midas hachesed, the derech hachesed sheba. Hainu simas halev his aninus shemitzad gavra. It's not about the chefza. It's not about the item. It's not about what you're giving them. It's about how you're treating them. It's about the gavra. It's about the person. It's about you. Are you showing real interest and love? Is the balabayis hama'areach, is the one who is hosting, showing all this la'oirach, to the guest? Umaisa gavra v'simas liba hayu b'shleimus b'chnasarchem zu shel Avram Avinu. And when it came to Avram Avinu, it's not a shaila. Is this be'emes, a story on which we could talk about achnasas orchim and how important it is? Now that we understand that the most important thing in achnasas orchim is not about what you give, it's about how you give it. And in this respect, Avram Avinu got an A+++. Yes, sir, okay, and more than this. Gam hanifal b'oreach shal yidei achnasas orchim miskayim etzel Avram b'shleimus sherei inyan anal shesvius rotzen ha'oreach mesimas halev yeshnu b'malachit u'befrat kishaboim b'tmus hanashim. And even more, that way in which the guest is impacted through achnasas orchim absolutely occurred through Avram Avinu. And it occurred by Avram Avinu in the story Bishleimus, in a most complete way. Because the satisfaction that the guest feels from the attention that the host gives them, that malachim can feel, that malachim need. They don't need the nutrition, they don't need the hydration, but they need that. And Avram gave that to them. And especially especially if you're talking about attention that Avram Avinu gave. We know how much Hashem loved Avram Avinu. And even in this parsha, it says, Ki dativ, I knew about him. Lashon chiba. This is a term of endearment when Hashem says, I knew about him. Ubechlal, and even generally, avos hein markava. The Rebbe cites this over and over in Chassidus. So much is written about the fact that the avos were chariots to Hashem's will and desire. They had no personal agenda of their own. They were drawn only by Hashem's desire. So you're talking about somebody so exalted. These great attributes of the avos, and in this case, the great attribute of Ram, is known and revealed to the malachim. And it's gavoya yoser mimalas hamalachim, and it's so much higher than any of their attributes. V'im kain, and if so, hatoichen va'ikar b'achnasas orchim bevadai hayakan mitad Avram l'gabei malachim. So understanding how much malachim are able to appreciate the greatness of the avos, and they saw in revealed fashion how great he was, and he gave them so much attention and so much love. So for sure, the main thing that the Rambam wants to teach us about Achnasas Orchim was surely shown by Avram towards the Malachim. And I can't be the only one who's thinking about all the times that I did not go out to accompany my guests to their car, to their van, did not go with them to the bus station, and so on and so forth. But
and those that we were happy that they were